It's an all-out battle between two men who are icons of stalwart cinema and bastions of bad movies, Nicolas Cage versus John Travolta. Both have had legendary careers that span decades, and their films run the gamut, from the greatest stories ever put on celluloid to the most confusingly idiotic excuses for a paycheck.
No, not the beast! Not the beast!
Both are deserving of our respect, but only one will be crowned the all-time Red Box champion. I bet Bruce Willis got so mad when I just said that.
Ha, ha, ha.
Here's how it works. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer. Round 3, versatility. And then we'll do a wild card round to help me stall until I can come up with a winner. Tough decisions make folks pull their hair out, but for me to declare a winner between these two, I might just have to take my face off.
Yes. His face.
You know, 100 years from now, I hope people remember that movie. Put that in the time capsule as an accurate representation of life in 1997. People were swapping faces all over the place. Okay, y'all ready? Let's get it on.
Ah, what about me, asshole?
Whee! What a predicament.
Round 1, box office. Before Nick and John were prominent direct-to-DVD daddies, they made movies that were actually released in theaters.
Okay.
Since John first graduated from Mr. Cotter's sweat hog class in the mid-1970s, his films have gone on to gross a combined $4.9 billion domestically and $8.23 billion worldwide. In honor of The Boy in the Bubble, I adjusted for inflation. Early hits like Saturday Night Fever and Grease helped John keep a healthy $201 million per movie average throughout his career.
It's electrifying.
All right, Nick, time to see if you can match up with Grease Lightning.
You turn me on.
And Nick actually surpasses Danny Zuko in terms of movies made. So for films we have box office data for, Nick leads 58-41. However, he still trails in terms of total domestic gross. Nick has $4.1 billion and worldwide total $8.22 billion, which according to my TI-82 means his movies on average gross less than John's. But it's worth mentioning that both have had huge runs in their career where they were arguably the most bankable movie star on the planet. After coming on the scene primarily with wacky comedies and dark indies, Nick Cage became everyone's favorite action star in the mid-90s. Look at films like Con Air, Face Off, and Gone in 60 Seconds, all launched thanks to his performance in The Rock. Ironic because Stanley Goodspeed wants no part of any action in that movie. That's the film that empowered Michael Bay.
How, in the name of Zeus's butthole?
As I mentioned, John Travolta had a huge arrival onto the big screen with some impressive singing and dancing. Afterwards, he became the comeback kid. Every time you doubted whether he could be a relevant box office presence again, he'd answer with films like Look Who's Talking or Pulp Fiction. I'd still pay money to see a sequel to The Rock, but if we're talking overall box office, John Travolta is getting the nod. He goes up 1-0.
Feels good.
Woo! It's my prerogative.
Round 2, Tomatometer. Let's just get this over with. John and Nick have made some bad, rotten movies.
When you deal in the business of death, saving a life can be the most deadly job of all.
We've had lots of hearty guffaws at the expense of Cage, but Travolta seems particularly allergic to nightshades. Did you know he's made 7 movies, 7, that are 0% on the Tomatometer? How is that even possible? If you tried, could you replicate that? It's such incompetence to the level that I'm almost impressed.
I don't like your attitude one bit.
Nick Cage has had more than his share of duds as well, and a couple have even joined John at 0% on the Tomatometer.
Maybe I shouldn't breathe so much, Terry. Ha ha!
Here's a fun game. I'm gonna rattle off a bunch of films, and you tell me which one is not a Cage or Travolta disaster, but actually a movie I made when I was in 3rd grade. Deadfall, Grand Isle, Life on the Line, Speed Kills, The Poison Rose, and Left Behind. Give up? Those are actually all Nick Cage or John Travolta movies. I would never lump my crown jewel, The Legend of Dark Cove, in with that trash.
Show me the Joker.
Oh, come on. Put the gun down.
Just show me the fucking Joker.
There's a reason why we as a society keep letting John and Nick make bad movies. It's because they've also made some really great flicks. Nick Cage recently scored his highest ranked film in the Tomatometer ever with 2018's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, currently 97%.
This is purple.
Now?
He also starred in Red Rock West at 95%, and Moonstruck is at 93%. Meanwhile, Travolta's highest climb is Face Off, with Nick Cage, and Pulp Fiction, both at 92%. And despite making more movies than John, Nick retains a higher per-film average on the Tomatometer at 47%. John, weighed down by his crowded gaggle of crap at 0%, has a 40% average. So if you need one last piece of evidence that Nick Cage should win this round, how about this? Cage's loose prison trilogy of The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off averages 71%, while Travolta's bad guy smoking quadrilogy of Broken Arrow, Face Off, Swordfish, and The Punisher is only 58%. Now you may claim that's totally arbitrary and not fair, but I had to do it as a reminder to everyone how poorly 2004's The Punisher has aged.
No.
Eesh. Bring back Dolph Lundgren. Nick Cage gets the win, and we're tied at 1-1.
He may have my soul, but he doesn't have my spirit.
Round 3, versatility. Both fellas have stuck around as long as they have because they are constantly able to reinvent themselves, all while maintaining some semblance of the original persona that we fell in love with.
Really?
Sure, John Travolta's Vincent Vega bears little resemblance to Tony Manero, but he still gets out on the dance floor. And for that matter, so does Edna Turnblad in Hairspray. 3 very different characters, but all distinctly Travolta.
I mean, it wasn't me. You gotta know that. I mean, it was me, of course, but it wasn't me.
Nicolas Cage may never be considered as cool as John was in the 1970s, but maybe that's why he's able to be even more of an on-screen chameleon. He's a veritable cartoon in Raising Arizona, a likable everyman in The Rock.
What do you say we cut the chit-chat a-hole?
And amazing as Charlie Kaufman in Adaptation. Whereas Travolta, we can prepare somewhat for the type of character we're gonna get. Nick Cage, that's anyone's guess. I don't even think he knows. Both gentlemen can play the hero or the antagonist.
Wow. We've got something in common.
But Nick Cage more consistently challenges himself and the audience, and maybe that's why he continues to churn out quality films as diverse as Mandy, Joe, and Spider-Verse. Big props to John Travolta for being able to play cool. Not everyone can, and some of us struggle with that in real life. Occasionally, he gets to go against type. Shout out to his award-winning TV role as Robert Shapiro, and he can dance the night away, but Nick Cage is the more versatile performer. He wins the round and is up 2-1 on Turl. That's Travolta's character in Battlefield Earth. Here's a pamphlet. Check it out.
2 Rogers don't make a right.
And now it's time for our wild card round. Most iconic. Nick Cage, John Travolta. Asking who's more iconic is like asking who's more out of their mind. Can't we just be happy that they're both on Mars?
It's too late!
Too late! Too late!
Well, however one can achieve icon status, chances are these guys have done it. Nick Cage is a consistently great GIF, meme, dinosaur bone collector, what have you, and John Travolta will not rest until he screws up Idina Menzel's name every way possible. See, I can do it, why can't he? So let's look at their most noteworthy on-screen accomplishments. Nick takes the early lead because he's won an Academy Award for Leaving Las Vegas. But more so than that film, and yes, it is my most played Sheryl Crow song, we know Nick for going full tilt in flicks like The Wicker Man, Kick-Ass, and of course, Vampire's Kiss. If you think you haven't seen Vampire's Kiss, trust me, you have. He's a maniacally fun guy to root for in National Treasure movies, harebrained 90s action films, or really deep art pieces.
Hello.
Been drinking, have we?
Just a nip.
But John Travolta, at multiple times in his career, could be considered the coolest movie star on the planet. It doesn't matter if he's Danny Zuko dreaming of Summer Lovin' in 1978, or Chili Palmer trying to get Napoleon greenlit almost 20 years later.
I mean, it is the Cadillac of minivans.
There's no doubt that Nick Cage just had a much better decade than John, but can you ever count out a guy who's made at least 5 career comebacks in his life? The dude made Wild Hogs and he still gets invited to the Oscars. If that ain't Teflon, I don't know what is.
I just want to ride, man. I just want to ride. You know, ride, Sally, ride.
Could the history of movies be written without Moonstruck, Leaving Las Vegas, The Rock, or Adaptation? I wouldn't like it, but it could. On the other side of the coin, I don't think you can write a biography of the Talking Pictures without Gotti. I'm kidding. Instead, I'll say Pulp Fiction or Saturday Night Fever. Nicolas Cage has become iconic for being Nick Cage, but John Travolta is an icon because he's a movie star. And he flips names. Adele Mazim? Really? And he just kept smiling. That was my favorite part. John, you win the round, our hearts, and we're all tied up at 2.
What?
And now I have to make possibly the toughest decision of my young career. Who wins, Nicolas Cage or John Travolta? And my answer is... before we get to that, there's another just as fun question. Who was better in Face Off? It's impossible to tell. Cage takes the early lead as the villainous Castor Troy. Hallelujah! But then they do the face swap, and suddenly Travolta gets to have all the fun, including a super creepy scene with his own daughter. I mean, I know that's not really his daughter, but she thinks it's her dad, so the damage has been done. And then there's an epic fight scene, and we get to completely reverse the surgery. How did we as an audience buy that in 1997? These guys swap faces twice, and the recovery time is less than lazy. I think it's a dead heat, but if I have to pick one, I'm going with Cage and Face Off. Because I'm going with John Travolta overall.
God damn, what a rush.
John Travolta narrowly edges out Nick Cage because in 100 years from now, when the face swap technology actually exists, we will still be talking about how great Saturday Night Fever and Grease was, and what an impact Pulp Fiction had on the art of cinema. If it's any consolation to all you Nick Cage fans out there, recently, A National Treasure 3 was greenlit. It's about damn time. Now we just need an A-list villain to race against Nick for a priceless artifact. I think I know someone.
You good looking.
And now it's time for you, the dear viewer, to get involved. Comment below with your vote. Is it Team Nick or is it Team John? Let us know and defend your answer. Until next time, I'm Mark Ellis, reminding you to stop raking arrows and start striking the moon. I probably should have gone with Raising Arizona. Have a good one.